From New Delhi, you're watching DD India Live. Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India Live, India's voice to the world. I'm Preeti Kaur. Coming up in the next 30 minutes. US President Biden and Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu in war of words over Gaza conflict after Biden's warning that Israel risks losing global support in the conflict. NATO and leaders from multiple countries reject French President Emmanuel Macron's comment on sending troops to Ukraine. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi, Michigan, a battleground state for the 2024 US presidential primary, is holding the primary. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi in Tamil Nadu launches projects worth 17,300 crore rupees in Tuticorin in Tamil Nadu to visit Maharashtra later today. The United States has said that it does not want to see tensions rise further between Israel and Hezbollah, adding that Israel had assured Washington it wants a diplomatic solution.
We do not want to see either side escalate the conflict in the north, and in fact, we are going to continue to pursue a diplomatic resolution of that conflict. And while we saw the defense minister's comments, we have also taken note that repeatedly the defense minister and other officials of the government of Israel, including the prime minister, have said publicly that they would prefer the situation to be resolved diplomatically. And so that's what we're going to continue to pursue. And ultimately, that would make military action unnecessary.
US President Joe Biden warned that Israel risks losing global support in the conflict. On Monday, Biden said that the US hopes to have a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas in Gaza by next Monday. The US president also suggested later on that Israel could lose support from around the world if it keeps up with this incredibly conservative government they have. In his response to US President Biden, Israel's Prime Minister Netanyahu said that he had consistently resisted pressure to end the conflict prematurely and that this stand of his has popular US support that will help them continue the campaign until total victory over Hamas. The Emir of Qatar has carried out a state visit to Paris, where he met French President Emmanuel Macron to discuss the bilateral relationship between Doha and Paris. The two leaders also discussed West Asia situation, including possibility of release of hostages in Gaza, a potential ceasefire between Israel and Hamas, and the possibility of a future two-state solution. Ross Kalan gets us more details from Paris.
Well, the talks taking place on Tuesday at the Élysée Palace, the French presidential office and residence, which you can see behind me here in central Paris. President Macron hosting Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, the Emir of Qatar, for an official state visit, state dinner and official bilateral discussions between Paris and Doha about their bilateral relationship. But also, crucially, the key underlining point of the two men meeting is to try to forward the discussion on the situation in the Middle East. Can there be a deal to release some or all of the hostages still being held by Hamas inside Gaza, who were captured from inside Israel during Hamas's attack on October the 7th? Can there be a deal on a temporary or permanent ceasefire. That's certainly something that the United States president is hopeful of. Also, the continued flow of aid into Gaza during the conflict and also after the conflict. And on that point, can there be an eventual end to the war? What form would the two-state solution take? Now, the Elysee Palace have said very clearly that that is a key priority both for Qatar and for France as well, making sure that there is that option open for the two-state solution after the end of the conflict between Israel and Hamas. But Qatar has played this crucial role. We know that the Prime Minister was here over the weekend for talks with the United States, Israel and Egypt as well. It's the second time that France has hosted those specific four nations to try to get a deal on hostages, on aid and on an eventual end to the conflict. France being the crucial player in hosting those talks, the Qatari Prime Minister here over the weekend, and now on Tuesday for an official state visit, the Emir of Qatar. In Paris, Ross Cullen reporting for DD India.
U.S. National Security spokesperson John Kirby confirmed that U.S. troops will not be stationed in Ukraine following French President Emmanuel Macron's statement that France could not rule out sending troops to Ukraine. France's Foreign Minister Stéphane Séjourné clarified that France could send troops for specific needs, but not for fighting in the war against Russia. Kirby also denied that the U.S. could have non-combat participation in the war. The only U.S. military personnel currently on the ground are part of the Defense Attache's office. NATO allies Germany, Britain, Italy, Spain, Poland and the Czech Republic distanced themselves from Macron's idea, while the Kremlin deemed a direct conflict between NATO and Russia inevitable.
The only U.S. military personnel that are in Ukraine are associated with the embassy as part of the Defense Attaché office, and they're doing important work in terms of helping us with the accountability of weapons and systems that are provided to Ukraine. The president's been clear, there's not going to be U.S. troops on the ground in Ukraine.
Pentagon spokesperson Major General Patrick Ryder said that the United States has no plans to send troops to fight in Ukraine during a briefing on Tuesday. Ryder added that international efforts are coming in order to ensure that Ukraine receives aid as quickly as possible to meet their most urgent needs.
We have no plans to send U.S. service members to fight in Ukraine. The president has been pretty clear on that, and that continues to be our position.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky held talks in Saudi Arabia on Tuesday with Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman and praised the kingdom's efforts in seeking a solution to end Russia-Ukraine war. A statement on Zelensky's website said that the two men discussed Kyiv's peace formula for ending the conflict, and the president thanked the Crown Prince for his valuable advice in finding ways to speed up its implementation. Zelensky and the Crown Prince discussed the content of a peace summit Switzerland has agreed to host later in the year. Also discussed were possible steps for truly restoring security for Ukraine, Europe and the world as well. The Saudi state news agency said the Crown Prince affirmed the kingdom's keenness and support for all international endeavors and efforts aimed at resolving the Ukraine-Russian conflict. And in more updates on Russia-Ukraine conflict, Russia on Tuesday claimed that its forces had hit Ukrainian fighting vehicles, while Ukraine said that it had attacked Russian air vehicles. The Russian Defense Ministry, in addition, said that its air defense forces shot down a Su-25 aircraft of the Ukrainian Air Force, intercepted HIMARS rocket and a number of drones. On the same day, the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine said that Ukrainian forces had repelled multiple Russian attacks in 7 directions. South Korea and the United States will begin their annual spring military drills next week, with a focus on heading off North Korea's any potential use of nuclear weapons. The Freedom Shield exercises, set for March 4th to 14th, came as North Korea continues to test various missiles and other weapon systems and develop its nuclear capability. The exercise will be the first since Pyongyang scrapped the 2018 Inter-Korean Military Pact in November. At a press briefing, US and South Korean military officials said the drills will be tough and realistic and will be focused on countering North Korea's nuclear operations. As polling has concluded in parts of Michigan, where both Democrats and Republicans are voting in the state's primary, U.S. President Joe Biden easily won the Democratic presidential primary in Michigan, but a protest vote by Democrats angry over his support for Israel's conflict against Hamas in Gaza exceeded the organizers' expectations. Meanwhile, former President Donald Trump won the state's Republican presidential primary by a large number, strengthening his grip on the party's White House nomination as Nikki Haley, his last remaining rival, came in a distant second. With almost half of Democratic votes counted, the number of uncommitted voters was more than 58,000, according to Edison Research, far exceeding the target of 10,000. Republican presidential candidate Nikki Haley took aim at former President Donald Trump 1 week before the state's presidential primary election, saying she'd be a better candidate against Democratic President Joe Biden. The former South Carolina governor addressed a crowd in Centennial ahead of the state's primary elections on March 5th. Nikki Haley also reminded her supporters of a recent comment by Donald Trump encouraging Russia's President Putin to invade United States allies. While speaking at the rally in Colorado, Haley also said that Trump will not be able to win a presidential election and that the country's next president will be a woman.
Donald Trump got on stage, went off his teleprompter, and said that he would actually encourage Putin to invade our allies. Now think about what that means. That means Donald Trump's going to side with a tyrant who kills his political opponents. That means Donald Trump is going to side with a thug where 500,000 people have died or been wounded because of Russia invading Ukraine. That means Donald Trump is going to side with a madman who arrests American journalists and holds them hostage. Putin's made no bones about the fact that he wants to destroy America. And Donald Trump's going to choose him over our allies who stood with us after 9/11?
President Joe Biden urged the top 4 leaders of Congress on Tuesday to take swift action to prevent a potential government shutdown and called for the passage of emergency aid for Ukraine and Israel. President Biden said that the U.S. needs to find a solution to fund the government while providing aid to Ukraine and avoiding an economically damaging government shutdown. Biden made the comments during a meeting with leading Democrats and Republicans in the Oval Office of the White House.
We have to replenish the air defenses for Israel, and we have to work on making sure they don't face the threat from, they can face the threat from what's going on in the Middle East, not just from Hamas, but from Iran. And government funding, I'm sure you guys had all that all taken care of, but all kidding aside, I think that it's Congress's responsibility to fund the government. We got to get about doing a shutdown would damage the economy significantly, and I think we all agree to that, and we need a bipartisan solution.
Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk said on Tuesday that he could not rule out widening a national ban on imports of Ukrainian grains if the European Union does not act to protect the bloc's markets. Poland last year extended a ban on Ukrainian grain imports. Tusk made the remarks during a visit to Prague as thousands of Polish farmers took to the streets, escalating a protest against food imports from Ukraine and EU green rules. Thousands of farmers marched through the Polish capital before reaching the Prime Minister's office. Polish farmers protested in Warsaw, escalating their month-long strike that started early February against food imports from Ukraine and EU regulations needed to curtail climate change. Polish farmers began a series of protests throughout the country earlier this month, which included a near-total blockade of all Ukrainian border crossings, as well as disruptions at ports and on roads nationwide. Up next, we'll take a look at other stories making it to the headlines from across the world now. Raging flames of fire engulfed the Royal Plastic Factory in the West Bank city of Hebron. Attempts of the local fire department and civil defense had failed to put out the fire. Residents were urged to stay away from the fire and asked to remove any nearby vehicles to avoid further damage. Many actors, including Bradley Cooper, Coleman Domingo, Paul Giamatti, Cillian Murphy, Jeffrey Wright, Daniel Brooks, Emily Blunt, America Ferrera and Jodie Foster were nominated for the leading roles statuettes at the 96th Academy Awards. Up next, a short break on DD India Live. But after the break, Japan will begin the fourth discharge of radioactive treated wastewater from the wrecked Fukushima nuclear plant into the Pacific Ocean from today. Indian Navy, NCB and Gujarat ATS together in a joint operation seized drugs along the Indian maritime border. Mumbai camp hopeful of a strong showing in the semi-finals as Shreyas Iyer replaces Suryansh Shedge in the squad for the Ranji Trophy semi-final. Welcome back after the break. You're watching DD India Live and I'm Preeti. Let's get to more international updates. Ministers and international leaders from the G20 held a meeting in Brazil with President Inacio Lula da Silva, putting inequality and poverty as well as climate change at the top of the agenda. Brazil's Environment Minister, Marina Silva Brazil, stressed on the need to tackle climate change to avoid further global instability in the celebration of 200 years of diplomatic relations with the United States. Brazilian President Lula da Silva pushed to give developing nations of the Global South a wider platform in the G20 meetings during Brazil's presidency. TEPCO, or the Tokyo Electric Power Company, and the Japanese government will begin the fourth discharge of radioactive treated wastewater from the wrecked Fukushima nuclear plant into the Pacific Ocean on Wednesday. The move comes after the latest batch of water has been confirmed to meet radioactivity levels within the standards set by both the entities. The wastewater release first began in August last year, despite opposition from countries such as China. Secretariat employees in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir will go on strike on February 29th against the government's discriminatory policies against them. According to the president of the Secretariat Employees Association, Islamabad wants to fire Kashmiri ad hoc workers to replace them with those from Pakistan. The association alleged that the employees in the occupied region are not receiving fair treatment when it comes to their allowance. Members of the association are also annoyed as the employees in POK are not being promoted to permanent positions. And back home on the second day of his three states visit, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi arrived in Tuticorin, Tamil Nadu. He also visited an exhibition, reviewed all the development projects there. In the public program at Tuticorin, Prime Minister laid the foundation stone of Outer Harbour Container Terminal at V.O. Chidambaram Airport. The project aims to leverage India's long coastline and favourable geographic location and strengthen India's competitiveness in the global trade arena. Prime Minister also inaugurated various other projects aimed at making the V.O. Chidambaram port as the first greenhouse hub port of the country. These projects include desalination plant, hydrogen production and bunkering facility. The Prime Minister launched India's first indigenous green hydrogen fuel cell inland waterway vessel under Harit Nauka initiative. Prime Minister also dedicated tourist facilities in 75 lighthouses across 10 states and union territories during the program. Also, Prime Minister dedicated several road and rail projects. Addressing the gathering, Prime Minister Narendra Modi said that Tamil Nadu is writing a new chapter of progress in Thoothukudi.
बड़े दुख के साथ सत्य कड़वा होता है, लेकिन सत्य जरूरी भी होता है। मैं सीधा सीधा आरोप लगाना चाहता हूं यूपीए सरकार पर। ये सारे जो प्रोजेक्ट मैं आज लेके आया हूं, ये दशकों से यहां के लोगों की मांग थी। आज जो यहां सत्ता में बैठे हैं, वे लोग उस समय दिल्ली में बैठे थे, सरकार चलाते थे, ये डिपार्टमेंट चलाते थे, लेकिन उनको आपके विकास की परवाह नहीं थी।
Later in the day, Prime Minister Narendra Modi, in his visit, will be making a visit to Maharashtra. He will release the 16th installment amount of more than 21,000 crore rupees under Pradhan Mantri Kisan Samman Nidhi, that is PM Kisan Yojana, through direct benefits transfer to the beneficiaries. With this release, an amount of more than 3 lakh crore has been transferred to more than 11 crore farmers' families. Prime Minister will also disburse second and third installments of Namo Shetkari Mahasanman Nidhi, benefiting about 88 lakh beneficiary farmers across Maharashtra. Prime Minister will disburse 825 crore rupees of revolving fund to 5.5 lakh women self-help groups across the state. He will also initiate distribution of 1 crore Ayushman cards across Maharashtra. He will launch the Modi Awas Ghar Kool Yojana for OBC category beneficiaries. He will also dedicate to the nation multiple irrigation projects benefiting Marathwada and Vidarbha region of Maharashtra. Prime Minister will also inaugurate multiple rail projects worth more than 1,300 crore rupees in the state. He will dedicate to the nation several projects for strengthening the road sector in Maharashtra. The 5th edition of joint military exercise between the Indian Army and Japan is being conducted in the Indian state of Rajasthan. Exercise Dharma Guardian is scheduled to be conducted from 25th of February till 9th of March. The exercise is an annual exercise and is conducted alternatively in India and Japan. The contingent of both the sides comprise of 40 personnel each. The Japanese contingent is being represented by troops from the 34th Infantry Regiment, and the Indian Army contingent is being represented by a battalion from the Rajputana Rifles. Aim of the exercise is to foster military cooperation and enhance combined capabilities to execute joint operations in semi-urban environment under Chapter 7 of United Nations Charter. On National Science Day today, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has extended his greetings and also reiterated his government's commitment of working to encourage research and innovation among the youth. In a tweet, the Prime Minister wrote, and I quote him, "Greetings on National Science Day. Our government is continuously working to encourage research and innovation among the youth. This is important to realize our dream of a Viksit Bharat." Up next, we take a look at other stories making it to the headlines today from India. Indian Navy, NCB and Gujarat ATS together in a joint operation seized 3,100 kilograms of drugs along the Indian maritime border, the largest ever seizure of drugs in the Indian subcontinent. The international market value of these drugs is estimated to be more than 2,000 crore rupees. India's Dibrugarh airport gets upgraded navigation system for better safety. The airport completes the successful setup and calibration of a Doppler very high frequency omni-range system. The installation and calibration of the system at Dibrugarh airport marks a critical milestone in enhancing navigation capabilities for incoming and outgoing flights. In his performance in the sport of shooting is consistently improving, and many new stars are emerging from the Olympic sport. Ahead of the upcoming Paris Olympics, DD India's Tapas Bhattacharya had an exclusive interaction with Olympic gold medalist Abhinav Bindra on the preparations and expectations from the Indian shooters. Take a look.
joining me is Abhinav Bindra to talk about India's chances in the Paris Games. So, this Paris Games is just around the corner. How do you see Indian team's chances? It's been a lot of work has been going on.
I think India will do very well. I think India is progressing in sport very well. I think the next decade or so will be a decade of development in sport in India, and our performances have progressively improved. Tokyo saw our best ever medal haul at the Olympics. The Asian Games saw more than 100 medals, which was unimaginable. And I'm quite positive that come Paris, we'll come back with our biggest, richest medal haul.
Being a shooter yourself, you have seen how the shooters have been doing over the last couple of years. But when it comes to the quadrennial event, we have generally fallen short of expectations. How do you see this change this time?
Well, we've failed the last 2 games, and hopefully third time we'll be lucky, and we'll come back with a few.
Much appreciate your time. So that was Abhinav Bindra. It's absolutely clear that this time, the third time Indian shooters will be lucky going into the Paris Games. With our person, Pramod Negi, this is Taposh Bhattacharya for DD India from Delhi.
The BCCI Secretary Jay Shah extended a warm praise to Jasinta Kalan on Tuesday, becoming the first female pitch curator in Indian cricket history. Jay Shah referred to this milestone as a historic stride for Indian cricket, which will be a significant turning point in the sporting landscape of our country. Kalan is currently overseeing the pitch preparations for the Women's Premier League in Bengaluru, marking a significant milestone for gender inclusivity in the sport. Jay Shah highlighted on the tireless efforts behind the scenes that contribute immensely to the success of the game. That's it in this edition of DD India Live, but let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can connect with us on Facebook, X and also Instagram. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Preeti Kaur signing off, and from all of us here in Delhi, thanks for watching DD India Live.